A few scoreless draws last night, which is unusual for a Premier League fare. But we might start with a much more exciting subplot off the pitch with the Enzo Maresca story, which we were discussing before you joined us, and maybe just the Man City side of that whole dynamic. Because what has come to pass or come to light in the last few days is maybe those links with Maresca and Man City are a little bit more concrete than they might have first appeared, and with the talk in the background that Pep Guardiola, this could be his last season, which seems to be a conversation we have this time every year. But what has been your sense of that sort of developing story?
Well, it kind of depends what you class as conversations or discussions between parties associated with Man City. Because what I've been told is that obviously Maresca changed his agent early this season to George Mendes, who's obviously a super agent. George Mendes has connections all over the place, including at the hierarchy at Man City. So we don't know whether the conversations or discussions that were had were basically George Mendes speaking to the Man City hierarchy during a game in the boardroom, just a quick chat or actual formal conversations. But I'd be more inclined to believe it was the former, in the sense that I don't see City having Enzo Maresca very high on their list of potential replacements for Pep. I mean, obviously, he's worked at City in the past. He worked with Pep for a while. But I think Enzo Maresca and his camp have really overplayed their hand here. He's had basically 18 months at Chelsea. Prior to that, he had a season in the Championship with Leicester. Prior to that, he had 6 months at Parma. He's not really got the credentials or the experience to manage a club of Man City's stature. So I think it was very convenient for him to be linked with City when he was, after his comments in the media the week before that. But I don't think Maresca's a serious candidate for Man City. He hasn't got the experience, he hasn't got the look. He's won a couple of trophies, but they're not the biggest trophies. I think it was a convenient link at the time. I'm not sure he's going to end up as the Man City manager, to be fair.
And is your sense that Man City are doing their due diligence? Maybe they do this every year just in case, because Pep is liable to do anything when it comes to contract negotiations. But it does feel a little bit more real this time. Pep's demeanour is a little bit different. We'll get onto the style of football and the signings and stuff. But do you think it is a little bit more concrete than previous years?
It feels like it, but I've got to say, probably over the last 5 years, you've had this scenario for about three times now.
Mm.
Each time Pep got into the last year of his contract, or the last few months of his contract, we're thinking this is going to be the year he's had enough, and he signed a new contract. And I was at Sunderland last night, as you said, and he was asked the question again, and the answer was the same as it has been. I've got a contract, guys. I'm loving it here. The club's great, but he didn't actually commit to being there next season. But that's pretty much his style anyway. He never really has been like that. So I've worked with Man City and Pep long enough to know that anything can happen. The only person that probably knows is Pep. But in terms of the due diligence, City are an incredibly well-run football club. They'll have their contenders and candidates lined up. They'll know who they want, I guess, and they'll know who is the best place to make it a seamless transition. Now, Maresca's name has been mentioned, but I think more from the Maresca end than anybody else. I think you're looking at people like Vincent Kompany, who has done well at Bayern Munich, could win a Champions League this season, got Manchester City kind of pedigree all the way through him. He's a big name, big character, got a good relationship with the hierarchy there. I think Kompany's ahead of Maresca significantly. I wouldn't really let Mikel Arteta. I think obviously it's unlikely, but who knows what will happen at Arsenal this season if they win the league, if they don't win the league. But he's got, again, admirers at City. I think when City make a move for Pep, and I guess that the hierarchy will know well in advance. It won't be like Sir Alex Ferguson at Man United just dropping it on the owners,
Yeah.
2 or 3 months before. City will be well prepared. And obviously they don't want to lose Pep. He's the best manager in the world, and it'll be a massive, massive wrench when he leaves. It'll be Ferguson style hole that he leaves, but I think City are much better placed to deal with it than United were when Ferguson left.
Yeah, and like he's been there long enough where he has presided over squad regeneration and rebuilt teams in his image with tweaks here and there. Maybe too much is being read into it, but the signings he's made this year do strike me a little bit more win now signings and more practical. Like Donnarumma was a market opportunity when the James Trafford thing wasn't quite working. Even Antoine Semenyo like had been linked with other teams, and Man City have taken pole position in pursuit of him. So I just wonder, I don't know, the style of play seems a little bit less pep like and a bit more trying to win in the moment.
Yeah, they've definitely evolved. It's not the Pep style that we saw when he came. The basically the tiki-taka pure football. He's definitely evolved his game and changed the way they play. But I'm not sure, because I think some of the signings he's made, I think certainly the last couple of years, I think every player that's left, every big player that's left, De Bruyne, Gundogan, several others, Kyle Walker, they've been replaced by players that aren't as good, who are not going to be as good. And I think that for me is whether that's the way the market is these days, whether the the players that they want aren't quite there, or whether the bigger rivals have got their act together a bit more and they're more capable of stopping City getting these big players. But I think Pep's having to work with an inferior squad than he has for the last 10 years, really. So I'm not sure it doesn't feel like Man United signing Van Persie for Sir Alex Ferguson his final season. It feels like this is a kind of an evolving City team, and who knows? I mean, who knows who'll be the manager next season, whether it be Pep or somebody else to take it on. But it doesn't feel like a squad that's being built for the next 5 years. It feels like a here and now squad, but again, here and now, but with players who aren't as good as the ones that went before. So what we're seeing is kind of Pep's genius as a manager, how good he is that he's got this squad, which take Haaland out, I think he's fairly, I won't say it's average, but it's not a title winning squad, but you've got Erling Haaland. So the fact that Pep's gotten competitive shows you what a great coach he is. So I just think it's him being the world superstar that he is as a coach, and he's dragging the players along with him. But who knows what will happen when Pep goes, because I do think it'll be hard for City to maintain their levels that they've shown for the last 10 years.
Yeah, like if you take Donnarumma, I suppose at an executive level, obviously Man City, the club are signing off on that signing, and he could be seen as a player who will excel in a post-Pep era. And similarly, Semenyo's in the prime of his career. On that one, is that seems to have been green lit, but is it imminent? Do you think the Semenyo deal?
Well, when I spoke to somebody last night who was involved at City, they were saying that they kind of expect him to play for Bournemouth this weekend, and I was really surprised at that because Semenyo won't want to play, don't want to jeopardise his move, and I thought the Bournemouth kind of hierarchy would not want to jeopardise £65 million. If he pulls a hamstring or suffers an injury, that's the deal done. So, or deal dead, I should say. So, yeah, it's a strange one that I do think it will get done, but I'd be very surprised. Well, listen, I'd be surprised if he plays tomorrow. But if that's what Bournemouth and or Areola wants him to do, then he'll play, and it could put things at risk. But I think City obviously they're prepared to trigger the release clause, so I don't quite know what the delay is, to be honest. If the escape clause is triggered, then there's not really much to negotiate. So there is a sense that Liverpool might come in, but it seems that Semenyo's made his decision and he's going to go to City. And watching last night, I think they scored prior to last night. They scored 23 goals in the last 8 games, so they don't actually need the goals. But having watched them last night, they do need something. They do need whether it's an explosive, powerful winger that they've got in Semenyo, because they've got good players, but they're not quite Semenyo. But again, it's a strange one because he's not an obvious fit, but I think he will make them better. But they're not crying out for goals. It's strange, but maybe it's one of those where they're stopping other people getting him. The City don't like the pass to sign a player, a good player, to prevent somebody else getting him. And also, he's got a great long throw, so maybe Pep's going even more one direct.
No, it did. It's funny you say that. It did strike me the Calvin Phillips example, and even Jack Grealish, who they paid £100 million for, but that was a market-driven price because other teams were in for him, and you could see Semenyo having a big impact at other teams. But it's not as if he's a player City won't use. Like, I think he will be effective, as you mentioned. Just on the other side of the coin last night, obviously unexpected drop points for Man City, but another brilliant point gain for Sunderland. I don't know if you've made it to the Stadium of Light very often this season yet, but they've been a breath of fresh air, haven't they, as a promoted team? Because there was a couple of years there where you feared for those promoted teams each year and they would kind of accept their fate early on in the season, but Sunderland have been quite the opposite, as have the other 2 promoted teams, in fairness.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Sunderland last night. Just obviously they made some really good moves in the summer, some great business. Because I must admit, when they came up, I'd seen them the year before when they were playing. I think they played Newcastle in the cup, and they were a million miles away, and they had a very young team. And their philosophy at the time was almost like a bit like Chelsea, to sign loads of young players and just churn them over. And they were never ever going to succeed doing that, in the sense that they were really young. But they've always had a change of approach in the summer. Brought some great players in. Shaka's had a great season. And one thing that impressed me with Sunderland last night was that the tenacity and the work rate. They were very much of a togetherness of a team. But every time they get the ball, they look to go forward with it. And 48 hours earlier, I was at Old Trafford watching Man United against Wolves, where the fans were crying out for United players to go forward, but it was sideways passes, and it was unambitious, it was cautious. Well, Sunderland are anything but, and they're getting the rewards for that. They're getting the rewards by being ambitious, being on the front foot, and they could have won last night. But yeah, at the end of the game, the guy in the PA system was basically saying "Happy New Year" and celebrate still being unbeaten at home, and it's amazing, really. Only them and Arsenal are unbeaten at home in the Premier League, but they are a breath of fresh air, and I think hopefully, and it's a bit of a cliche, but it is great for the Premier League to have a club like Sunderland back thriving, because it's a big club, big city, big stadium, and the fans are fantastic. So when a club like that gets it going, it adds a real kind of feel-good factor and a real good vibe to the Premier League. So they've been a great addition. And can they qualify for Europe? Maybe. but that might be the downfall. We've seen a lot of clubs that qualify for Europe really struggle the year after, but they're having a great season, and all credit to them and the coach as well. I just want to mention Regis Labrie. We're talking about Chelsea yesterday getting rid of Maresca and looking around for a coach, and it's probably going to be Leon Rossini because that's the way they go. Regis Labrie has done an amazing job at Sunderland. He's got his players working so hard for him. He should be in consideration for the Chelsea job, but he probably won't be.
And just on Sunderland generally, as I said, it kind of belies the experience of the promoted teams. And you could say that for Burnley, who gave a really good account of themselves in several games this year. They might struggle comparatively, obviously. And then Leeds got another really creditable result last night and will fancy their chances against Manchester United at the weekend. Are you heading to that one, or what do you make of that fixture?
Yeah, I'm going to Elland Road, and I think Leeds are favourites. I think Man United are higher up in the table, but Leeds are playing well. They've got confidence, and I was wondering whether because Man United haven't played at Leeds very often over the years, and the last time they played it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Now, does anybody in that squad know what is awaiting them on Sunday at Elland Road? Does Ruben Amorim know what is lining store at Elland Road? I hope for United say they do, because if they don't, they're going to get really caught out because the atmosphere and the intensity of that game is different. It's really hostile. It's the most vitriolic game in the Premier League. It's just, especially at Elland Road. And I think if the Man United squad aren't prepared for it, if Ruben Amorim thinks it's just another away game, then it could be a mess. It could be very messy for Man United. I think Leeds are favourites. I think Leeds will win.
And last time I spoke to you was after Grimsby beat Manchester United. And to be fair, United haven't regressed quite to that level. But as we approach 2026 or turn into the new year, the Ruben Amorim project, what's your assessment of it at the moment?
It's really hard to kind of measure, isn't it? Because if you look at the basic of the table, the league table doesn't lie well. It seems to be telling a few fibs this season, to be honest. Because I don't think Man United are the sixth best team in the Premier League. The Wolves game was terrible. It was similar to the Everton game and the West Ham game. You watch Man United, and they're so negative at times. And I think what United need is a coach with personality and the ability to be on the front foot, to be bold. That's what Man United are about. The alpha male football club, the arrogance and the unlikability that they used to have under Sir Alex Ferguson. That's it. They've gone. They're a very timid club now, and that comes from the coach. So, I don't think long term Amorim is the guy. I think he's too much of a philosophy coach, not enough personality there. But they are six, and in his defence, they were missing 8 players against Wolves. So they've got people like Mbuma that's away at the moment, Ahmad's away at the moment, obviously Mazraoui, missing Maguire at the back and De Ligt's big time, missing Bruno Fernandes. But even when all the players are fit, you still think, I'm not sure about this Man United team. When all the players are fit, they lost to Brentford. So I don't know. I think it's 2 steps forward, 2 steps back with Amorim. So I think, yes, he might get to the end of the season and they may qualify for Europe, but it's not convincing. And I don't think he's the guy for the long term.
And you mentioned Manchester United's last trip or their upcoming trip to Elland Road. Their last one, the goal scorers, they managed to get the job done, and Rashford and Garnacho were on the score sheet that day. And Amorim has reconstituted this squad with those two being foremost to those who are exiled. Like, Man United probably do need some additions and to spend money. Do you think the powers that be are minded to back players unique to this Amorim system, or do you think they will be going down that line of buying players who might exist post Amorim?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because listen, when you're signing footballers to play for Man United, it shouldn't be where they can fit a system, should it? It should be where they can play for Man United. And if you're a good player, you should be able to play in any system. So I'd be a bit alarmed if they're buying players that can only play in a 3-4-3 or 3-5-2 or whatever you're going to call it. So, and some of the players they have signed, I mean, let's look at Patrick Dorgu, for instance. He was signed to fit the system as a left wing back, and he's been pretty average. So you kind of hope that the people at United will look at it and think we've got to get players who are just good players who can play in different systems. And I think they'll probably get to that. I think it'll be very short-sighted for Man United just to buy players to fit one system, because that makes you very limited in the sense of what you can do. So I don't think much will happen in January. I think they haven't got the money to spend. They're looking at Semenyo as a potential, a one-off, and a bit like Man City. I'm not quite sure where he would have fitted in. I think it would have made them slightly better, but not, transformative. So United will save the money to get a couple of midfielders in the summer. I don't think there's one available in January that would make a difference. They might look to do a loan move for a Conor Gallagher or Ruben Neves, but they're not the long term. But they have to sort the midfield out, and then if you're a good midfielder, you can play in any system. So I'd hope that United are going to go for the players that can play in any system rather than players that can play in Amorim's negative system.
And you mentioned the truthfulness of the league table. Arsenal are top of that table at the moment, Mark. Still a good way to go, but they couldn't have entered the new year any more impactful fashion than what they did against Aston Villa, who are absolutely flying. So, are Arsenal in the box seat? Is that your measure of things?
I think so. I still think Arsenal are the best team. They're really solid, and when they get everyone playing, that they look the most convincing. But we've been here before with Arsenal, top of the league at Christmas, New Year, bit of a lead, never quite see it through. And I think they will be concerned about Man City being behind them. It's a gap that City can close. So I do think Arsenal are the best team. I think maybe this year they'll get over the line because obviously I think Kai Havertz coming back is a big thing as well. He's a much better option than Gyökeres. So just about Arsenal should hold the nerve. They're the best team, but I think we'll look back on this season eventually as not the best season in the Premier League's era. It's a lot of weak teams. I must admit, I did the piece after the game last night. We're halfway now through the season at 19 games apiece, and there's just been so many unpredictable scenarios. I think the only two clubs that you could say are probably punching above their weight and doing better than they expect are Sunderland and Aston Villa. I think everybody else is either at par or underperforming. So it's been a weird season, but I do think ultimately Arsenal will just see it through.
Be interesting to see. Thanks very much for joining us today, Mark.
No problem, mate.